Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Bali to attend the G20 Summit that's underway of world's major economies, and also hold bilateral meetings on its sidelines with key leaders on pressing global issues.
That's right, Gargi. The two-day summit is being attended by US President Joe Biden and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, among heads from 20 countries and European Union who make up the group. India will assume the group's presidency, and that's going to happen from the 1st of December.
Now, on the sidelines of the G20 summit, US President Joe Biden held a meeting with China's Xi Jinping, the first in-person meeting between the two superpower leaders since Mr. Biden took office.
Joe Biden promised that there will be no Cold War with China following that meeting. He also said that he did not believe that China would invade Taiwan, Gargi.
And in remarks after the meeting, he said he and Chinese President Xi Jinping held open and candid discussions during their meeting.
It was also clear that China and the United States should be able to work together where we can to solve global challenges that require every nation to do its part. We discussed Russia's aggression against Ukraine, reaffirmed our shared belief in the threat or the use of nuclear weapons is totally unacceptable. I absolutely believe there need not be a new Cold War. I've met many times with Xi Jinping, and we were candid and clear with one another across the board. And I do not think there's any imminent attempt on the part of China to invade Taiwan. And I made it clear that our policy on Taiwan has not changed at all. It's the same exact position we've had. I made it clear that we want to see cross-strait issues peacefully resolved, and so it never has to come to that.
Let's go across to Maha now, who joins us from Bali. And Maha, the session is underway on food and energy security. It's also this summit of world leaders also happening in the shadow of the war in Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely. And that is why this issue of food and energy security becomes very critical. We've seen how energy prices have been fluctuating since the time of the pandemic, and then later on the world has been suffering. Inflation is high in many of the countries. The global economy is in peril, and much of it is also connected in some way to the energy prices as well. India, for instance, Gargi, has been under pressure initially from the West that it reassesses its relationship with Russia. And that was largely because India was buying oil from Russia, which the West did not, in some sense, approve of. So they feel that the revenues from the energy export of Russia is what is fueling the Ukraine war. But India has stood its ground, and the reasons that India gave, the arguments India gave, was that India had to already cut its oil supplies from Iran in 2018 because of the unilateral US sanctions, then from Venezuela as well. For a country that is high on energy consumption, that doesn't have very high incomes, cheap modes of energy are very important for the country, and therefore it is important for many other countries in the South as well. So the South, voice of the global South, as well as speaking for itself, India stands at a summit of this nature, the G20 summit, one with 20 biggest economies, as a voice for the global South, as I was pointing out. And for them, energy and food crisis at the moment are acute. The food crisis has also been exacerbated by the Ukraine war, because a lot of wheat had been lying in the Ukraine silos. They could not move out through the Black Sea. So India once again stressing that the requirement is that there should be a mode wherein this wheat can move, and that is why we saw an agreement that was reached between Ukraine and Russia, brokered by Turkey and the United Nations. But India also played a critical part in that, considering it has a good relationship with Russia. India tried to explain to Russia that this food crisis is very acute, especially for the African continent, and therefore that is an aspect that, got sorted out temporarily, but that agreement is still 19th November. So we'll have to see which way Russia goes now, or for instance, Ukraine goes now. That is why this discussion and the session today, in which the PM is also participating, is very critical and important.
Maha, also take us through what's on the agenda as far as Indian Prime Minister Modi is concerned. Will he be meeting Xi Jinping?
So there is no clarity on that, but it's highly unlikely, because when we asked our sources Is there any prospect of that meeting? The response that we got was that the friction in Eastern Ladakh continues. There are at least 4 friction points where disengagement has happened, but 2 critical points, Depsang and Demchok, still remain as where the friction continues, and therefore till such time as the Eastern Ladakh issue is sorted out, it becomes very difficult to normalize the relationship, because India has already taken a stand on that count, saying that till the situation on the border, that is the LAC, is not normal, the bilateral relationship cannot be normal. Of course, the External Affairs Minister has on his part met his counterpart Awangi several times despite the friction continuing, but it has largely been to sort out and formulate a way forward for the Eastern Ladakh friction to in fact end. But that friction continues, and under such circumstances it becomes very difficult for the top leaders to meet. However, when the leaders are together, one cannot rule out any possibility, because we have often seen that despite all the words coming in from the officials or sources, if the leaders do choose, they can have some sort of informal interaction as well, where an agenda is not really sketched out, but it acts as an icebreaker. However, as of now, no official word on that meeting. We do know that some other bilaterals are going to take place largely tomorrow. The important ones, for instance, the meeting with the UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the French President Emmanuel Macron.